America, Bonjour, hi, Canada. Good Wednesday to you. I'm Hugh Hewitt in Studio North. President Biden went to bed. That's my lead story. And you say, why is that a lead story? There's a lot of news going on. Former President Trump is picking a fight with Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds. We got a lot of John Kerry audio for those of you who want to go back to sleep. We've got questions about the Hunter Biden plea deal and whether or not Judge Mary Ellen Noriega is going to do right. Well, Joe Biden went to bed. That's the lead story in the Telegraph. Biden skips NATO leaders' dinner to, quote, prepare for a big speech. So, President's tuckered out. All right? He got to go to bed at 5 o'clock because he's up at 6 a.m., which is not true. I go to bed early. You know, I got to get up early. If I sleep in, it's 5:15 when I get up. If I get up at the normal time, it's 4:30. But either way, I'm always on the air somewhere at 6 a.m. in the morning, 9 a.m. other places, 10 a.m. other places, 1 a.m., 1 p.m. other places. You know, but I have to get up early. So I understand going to bed early. But the president flies all the way to England, which is like a 3-hour flight, right? It's not like he's gone around the world to Japan. He's got jet lag. He went to England from Washington, D.C. It's actually less of a change to go from Washington, D.C. to Denver. So he goes over to England, and he get completely lost with the prince. He's wandering around, and then the Telegraph reports Joe Biden skipped a dinner with NATO leaders last night to head back to his hotel in Vilnius. I'm sorry, not in England. He went on from England over to Vilnius. He went to dinner back to his hotel in Vilnius to prepare for a, quote, big speech. U.S. official blamed the 80-year-old president's busy schedule and his absence at the gathering of the NATO alliance's leaders. Mr. Biden, who spent the weekend at the beach before arriving in Europe on Sunday night, had Anthony Blinken, the U.S. Secretary of State, attend in his place. That's going to be thrilling to everyone. I like Tony Blinken. I mean, I'd love to go to dinner with Tony Blinken. Very got a lot of good stories. You got every head of state there. There's a war in the middle of Europe. It's like going to the Tehran Summit with Churchill, FDR, and Stalin. And FDR saying, let me send over Henry Wallace. Cordell Hull. I don't know who it was. And the idea that the President of the United States cannot stay up for a NATO summit, is it about time we had a talk with the President about just showing your cards? You're not running for re-election. There's just no way. You're 80 years old and you're feeling it. But let's give a listen to what he had to say yesterday. Cut number 1. President Biden has arrived in Lithuania for the NATO summit. And he doesn't know where he's going. He's looking around, and if you're watching on the Salem News Channel, you can see it, but whoever is the president of Lithuania is tall, and now he's turning around and wants to go back on the plane. Then he shakes hand and he moves forward. Okay, cut number 2. President Biden, Jan Stoltenberg, who is the leader of NATO and has been since I was 7. Keep going. Cut number 2.
Mr. President, it's great to have you here at the NATO Summit.
It's good to be here, and thank you for continuing to deliver. As I've made no mistake, press is not at all surprised. I've been touting the fact that I think it's really important at this critical moment in Ukraine, in the whole NATO issue, that you continue to lead NATO. You're trusted. No one knows the situation that we're facing better than you do. And this historic moment, the adding of Finland and Sweden to NATO is consequential, and your leadership really matters. And we agree on the language that you proposed.
Okay, he's really sold on this Finland and Sweden deal. He's got that committed to memory. Finland and Sweden are coming in. Cut number 3.
Consequential, and your leadership really matters. And we agree on the language that you proposed relative to the future of Ukraine being able to join NATO, and we're looking for a continued united NATO. They've heard me say, my American president heard me say many times, I still think that that President Putin thinks the way he succeeds is to break NATO. Not going to do that, especially with you as the leader. So thank you for willing to do it. Thank you.
You know, I am reminded of A.T., my beloved grandfather, lived 101 years old on his own wheels in his own house. And, you know, I love the guy for so much, Gramps. And he was a fireman, so, of course, I looked up to him like a giant when I was, 3 or 4. But A.T., as he got older, was always a go-get-'em kind of guy. Not very good on the details. Where are you? Are you at Yale? Are you at Columbus? Do you go to Ohio State? Not real long on the details, but great on the love, right? That's what grandparents after 80 do. Not long on the details. They're at the baseball game. They're not sure if you're supposed to steal second or not. They're not even sure if it's a baseball game, but they're there, and they're cheering for you. And Grandpa Joe is just great. He's there for Jan Stoltenberg. But it gets a little bit worrisome when he tells the Lithuanian president, cut number 4.
Our pledge to be with you has not wavered. It didn't take us long to get thousands of troops here when Russia invaded the second time. We'll be assured that you're going to have all that you need. If we have a Secretary of Defense today, we can send him along. He's not. All kidding aside.
All kidding aside, that's after he jokes about Russia invading Lithuania. What do you think they talk about to each other? Rishi Sunak is 41 years old, so he's a kid. I mean, he's almost like Harley and Ben added together. So Rishi Sunak is a kid, but he's the prime minister. And what do you think? Who's the other youngest person here? Macron? Macron looks pretty young. When Macron and Sunak meet at the bar down in the hotel, and they start talking, there's Rishi, if you're watching on the Salem News Channel, shaking hands with Joe Biden at the front door. President doesn't know if he's coming or going. What do you think Rishi and Emmanuel Macron talk to each other about Joe Biden? I mean, seriously, when they're together, what do you think they say? They say, what's this guy going to be like in 4 years? Because they think he can beat Trump because they read the papers. I don't think he can. I honestly don't think anyone's going to vote for Biden. And I think the Democrats know that. Maybe they'll bring in, they do have a relief pitcher who was on the ground with him in Lithuania. Cut number 6. See who's warming up in the bullpen. Cut number 6.
Lots of parts of the world are exacerbating the problem right now. But when you have bombs going off and you have damage to septic tanks or to power centers, et cetera, you have an enormous release of greenhouse gas, of methane, of, all of the family of greenhouse gases. And the result is it's adding to the problem. I'm not, believe me, that's the fight in Ukraine is a fight that we have to make, that the world has to make. The values at stake are enormously important to all of us. So I'm not suggesting by any fashion that this is not a fight we shouldn't be involved in. But I am saying that there are ancillary impacts as a result of it.
Yes, the problem with the Ukrainian war is not that Putin has deported 16,000 Ukrainian children, kidnapped them, or that he's murdered 10,000 Ukrainian civilians and wounded double that number and is ravaging the land and is destroying infrastructure. It's that he's releasing greenhouse gases. So, but at least Kerry is standing up on his own power and doesn't have note cards. Cut number 7.
This is a very important point. The climate crisis is growing by the day. You just saw and have reported on what happened in New York. All around the world, there are record-breaking days where the heat is greater than it's ever been before. This will be the hottest June and July. It'll be the hottest summer. It'll be the hottest year. And we all know that because the science is telling it to us and because Mother Earth is responding.
Well, I'm going to withdraw my suggestion that John Kerry come in from the bullpen because I think we'll all go insane. I mean, we will all lose it if we listen to John Kerry every day prattle on about climate change. It's like Al Gore and John Kerry together should. What's that movie, that play by Sartre, No Exit? Hell is when you land in a room and John Kerry is talking to Joe Biden about climate change. That might be hell right there. I'll be right back, America. Don't go anywhere. I'm Hugh Hewitt, and I'm awake. The president isn't, but you're listening to The Hugh Hewitt Show. Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. If you read the New York Post, you will read Andrew McCarthy's column. Andrew McCarthy, frequent guest on this show over its 24-year run, and former federal prosecutor. He was lead prosecutor in the Blind Shake case. He really knows what he's doing. Andrew has a new column about Hunter Biden in the New York Post today, which I want to read to you. The Justice Department's deceitfulness regarding Hunter Biden's sweetheart plea deal gets more audacious by the day. Thanks to the media Democrat complex's partisanship, it also gets tougher to pierce, which, of course, is the point. Delaware U.S. Attorney David Weiss is a vice of the DOJ's own making. Credible IRS investigators, including supervisorial agent Gary Shapley, have reported that he told several law enforcement officials connected to the Biden investigation that he was not the ultimate decision maker regarding whether Biden would be charged, that he was being thwarted by other Biden-appointed U.S. attorneys in Washington, D.C. and California to the two districts with venue over tax charges, and that the Biden Justice Department, led by Attorney General Merrick Garland, had refused his request to be appointed as a special counsel. On the other hand, Garland, who is Weiss's boss, has insisted preposterously that Weiss has always been the ultimate decision maker and that all he needed to do was ask Garland for any extra authority he needed to file charges wherever he thought appropriate. Garland claims he was never asked by Weiss. On Monday, Weiss tried to squirm his way out of this vice in a terse, disingenuous letter to Senator Lindsey Graham. All right, so Weiss knows he's getting pummeled. He knows he's getting pummeled. In a nutshell, Weiss is straining to back up Garland while hoping no one notices that he does not deny the whistleblower allegations. Mary Katharine Ham, who co-hosts Getting Hammered with Vic Mattis, joins me. Good morning, Mary Katharine. How are you?
Hey, how's it going, Hugh? Am I right?
I am great. Do you think the Hunter Biden judge, whose name is Mary Ellen Noriega, is going to accept this plea deal?
Isn't this all sort of locked in already? I don't know the law as well as you do, Hugh. But isn't that how that works?
No, what they're going to do is they got to take the plea deal into the judge, a district court judge in Delaware, whose name is Noriega, and say, Judge, will you approve this? And if you remember when Michael Flynn's plea was revoked by Bill Barr, Judge Emmett Sullivan hired a former retired judge, and the former retired judge blasted DOJ. I think that was bad, but I do think this judge's eyebrows might go up, and she might ask for Merrick Garland, or the head of the criminal division, to come in next to Mr. Weiss and answer some questions.
I mean, that would be interesting, and I would love to see it. I'm sort of past the idea, the somewhat naive idea that people pay for things or see consequences or that things are done in a fair and non-political way with the DOJ. But I can hope. I thank you for this hope today, Hugh.
All right, I've given you a little bit of hope. Now I want to give you a little bit of rain. You are a Georgia Bulldog. Let's just make that clear. We have a new affiliate in Montgomery County, New York, who's never heard of Georgia. And so I want to let him know that you are a Bulldog through and through, and you've been misled on college football for a long time. You have a coach named Kirby Smart, who I think is an excellent man. But the program's had some problems, including one of their players dying in an automobile accident in a drag race run by the assistant coach, who I think got fired. But that's the program. Kirby Smart didn't get fired. Up at Northwestern, Pat Fitzgerald has been there 17 years, and his beloved got fired because of one allegation that the investigator said he knew nothing about. Has that come across your radar screen yet?
Yes, well, inevitably because of Guy Benson, it has come across.
I was going to say that was a dumb question. Guy's probably been on the 24/7 helpline to Mary Katharine. What do you think?
Here was my thought, because I read the executive summary of the investigation. The investigation is confidential, which makes it a little bit hard to judge because there's a wide range of hazing incidents that can happen, and there's sort of a vague description of them here, but I'm not sure what we're dealing with. And like you said, in the investigation, it's determined that he didn't know about this. Now, of course, there is buck stops here situation with both Kirby Smart, which he has taken responsibility for and said these players' behavior is on me to some extent. And that's how I want to run my program. But I'm not sure if we don't know the extent, and if he didn't know what was going on, that firing immediately was the right call. It's very unclear to me how major this was.
I do not believe either of them should get fired. It's very hard to build a program, and you can only assess a program by looking at everyone who comes through a program. And I'm sorry one kid got very badly hazed, and there's no doubt that he did. I don't think anyone doubts his account. But there's no doubt that a player in Georgia is dead, too. But the fact of the matter is, universities are a complicated thing. I mean, how despairing is Guy Benson? I haven't talked to him. I'm afraid to call him.
Yeah, I mean, I think he takes the allegations very seriously and wants the program to be clean, obviously. That's one of his main concerns. So I think it's something to worry about. The question is, how much did the coach know and how much should he know? And should he be sort of omniscient about this? By the way, I was reading up on Georgia football's program yesterday, and the athletic department has sent a sort of devastating, thorough 9-page request for a retraction to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution for a story that alleges that the program's quote unquote rallies behind players that have been accused of abusing women, which the program says, no, sir, much of this story is inaccurate and or fabricated. And I read the entire letter. The AJC has some things to answer for here. It's not good.
I may have to get getting hammered this week because I'm sure Vic Mattis is going to be talking about Georgia football. You ought to have Guy Benson as a guest on this week just so you can all talk about college football on Getting Hammered. Mary Katharine, thanks for joining me. I'll be right back, America. Stay tuned. Morning glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. Reminding all of you, head over to HughStrawpoll.com and tell us who you want to be the presidential nominee for the Republicans. Everyone, every single individual in the Salem media universe is asking everyone to join the town. The straw poll, mine is Hugh Straw Poll. So pleased to welcome back now United States Senator Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee. She is the first United States Senator who is a woman from Tennessee. Hello, Senator Blackburn. Welcome back.
Good morning to you.
You know, I was with my friend John, who is the mayor of Nashville. You know John Cooper. And we were talking about you, and John said, we're in different parties, but she's a great senator for our state, and she is the first woman elected to our state, to the Senate from Tennessee, which I did not know. For some reason, I didn't know that, Senator.
Well, that is accurate, and I think Mayor Cooper is going to be missed when he leaves office. He chose not to run for re-election.
I was walking down the street with him, urging him to do that, and he said, Hugh, I have done my service. And so we thank him, and good luck to whoever comes in. Senator, I want to talk to you about Joe Biden and Hunter Biden in that order. First of all, the lead headline in the Telegraph this morning is that Joe Biden skipped the dinner last night and went to bed. And I understand that for an 80-year-old guy, but do you think the president demonstrates the ability to go 2 more years, much less 6 more years as president?
Oh, not at all. You can look at the frailties that he exhibits every single day, the physical frailties, his inability to focus. You look at the video from his visit there in London with King Charles, and he just looks like an old guy that is not able to get his act together. And I think this is why you're seeing the conversation change, and Democrats in growing numbers are encouraging him to not run, to end his public service and to step out of the way and open the door. Of course, they would love to have Gavin Newsom as their nominee, and they're trying to make the way for Gavin Newsom to become that nominee.
That's what I think, too. And I don't know how they're going to do it. Maybe they want to just close the door to Jared Polis and everyone else who wants to run, especially Vice President Harris. And they're going to wait so late that only Gavin's got the money. Is that what you think is going on, that it's all set up?
It's hard to tell right now, but I find it so interesting that people are beginning to talk about his age, his frailties, his lack of recognizing the granddaughter that is there in Arkansas, saying he has 6 grandchildren, not 7. There are too many on the left in the media that are beginning to hold him to account. I think that adding to this, Hugh, is the fact that all of a sudden the Secret Service can't figure out who brought cocaine into the White House, into the West Wing. And, of course, you go through an exterior screening before you ever get inside the gate to go into the building, and there are cameras everywhere, there are agents everywhere. You know that they know exactly who brought that in and why.
I do believe that, because I know the cubby they're talking about where you put your electronics, because you can't bring electronics into the West Wing.
Do.
Yeah, and so they have a picture of whoever did that. They know whoever put stuff in whatever cubby the Coke was found in. Senator, I want to turn to Judge Mary Ellen Noriega. She is the federal district court judge in Delaware, who will be reviewing the plea deal, the sweetheart plea deal that Hunter Biden entered into with the U.S. attorney up there, David Weiss. You're on the Judiciary Committee. Do you want David Weiss in front of your committee, and do you want Merrick Garland and the Deputy Attorney General to answer for this? Because it is shocked and outraging more and more people every day.
Yes, and I do telephone town halls with Tennesseans, and every county in the state is invited into a telephone town hall at some point during the year. And I did one last night with several of our Tennessee counties. And Hugh, the fact that the Bidens are not being held to account, it came up over and over and over in just nearly every question. People would say, and something's got to be done about this 2 tiers of justice. And why is it that we can't find out? Why are they not held to account? Why is it that over and over they can violate firearms law? They can violate IRS law. They can violate the foreign lobbying laws, and nothing happens. And I find it so interesting that 2 tiers of justice, people want equal treatment, equal access, equal justice. And they are looking at this, and they've looked at the Durham report, and they're saying, nobody's doing anything to Hillary Clinton. And you've got John Durham who says she made the whole thing up. And then she found somebody that her campaign could pay to go put together the dossier, to hire Fusion GPS, to market the dossier, to get the media working with them. It was all Hillary.
Yep.
She and her campaign. And nothing has happened to her. And people are going, wait a minute, if I pay my taxes 2 weeks late, I get fined. And why doesn't something happen to them? If I do something wrong, I have to be held to account. But nothing happens to them. And it is just something that people, and fortunately, they respect the rule of law. They want the rule of law to be abided by, and they want everyone to be held to account. And
now, Senator Blackburn, you're on Judiciary. People don't know that you're not a lawyer, but you're on Judiciary. Is there any way for you to bring this plea deal before the committee? I know you don't get the gavel. You don't get to set the agenda. But if they have a hearing, can you just bring up this plea deal and make a speech about it? Because it really does assault every... Go ahead.
Yeah, I can assure you that the next time we have Christopher Wray and Merrick Garland, anyone from DOJ, these are issues that are going to come up. Because, yes, indeed, there are good people that are at DOJ and the FBI. And this political cabal that has risen up in the FBI and the DOJ, the fact that people who are sworn to protect and enforce the law are the ones who are breaking the law, this is something that is completely unacceptable. These people, their paycheck comes from the U.S. taxpayer, hardworking taxpayers who are working every single day to pay their taxes and abide by the law. And they find this conduct to be outrageous.
Now, Senator, I got one question that's off topic. My friend John Schroeder is now a constituent of yours. He moved to Knoxville with his wife, his wonderful wife, and my senior producer is visiting him. And it turns out that Schroeder is a Roll Tide fan. He reads, he's a University of Alabama guy. How does that work in Knoxville? Will your office even take calls from an Alabama fan who's a Tennessee voter?
We have individuals on our team, both in the state and in D.C., who are Vol fans through and through, who are Vandy fans, who are Roll Tide fans, Mississippi State. We've got the entire SEC. We have a lot of fun during the different seasons, whether it's football, basketball, baseball.
So you'll meet with, even if he is
competition.
All right. I'm glad to know that, because I was a little bit afraid that even though he votes for you and he's a good Republican and all that stuff, that Schroeder was going to be banned by calling the senator. Senator Marsha Blackburn, always a pleasure. Keep coming back. Thank you for joining me this morning, Senator. I just want to make sure. Dwayne's in Tennessee. I want to make sure he gets an exit visa, because he's running around with Schroeder wearing a Roll Tide deal. Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt in Studio North. So pleased to welcome back Chairman Mike.
There's no failure in sports.
Gallagher, who comes from Wisconsin, where, as we all know, there's no
failure in sports.
And that's really a comfort, because, Congressman, the Brewers aren't in first place, the Guardians are. So at the All-Star break, I want you to know that's spreading throughout Wisconsin. It's impacting all of your franchises.
Well, good thing there's no failure in sports, Hugh. We can all comfort ourselves with that fact.
Now, you are going to have a hearing. The Select Committee on Engagement with the Chinese Communist Party is going to have a hearing. And I'm very much looking forward to this, because they are pursuing dissidents in the United States. Tell us about this.
Well, we are having a roundtable today on the CCP's war on religious freedom. They are not only pursuing members of the dissident community in the United States within China, they're doing things like rewriting the Bible. For example, in the Gospel of John, when Jesus famously defends a woman caught committing adultery against her accusers, he says the famous words, "Let he among you without sin cast the first stone." This is a beautiful story of forgiveness and mercy. But in the CCP approved version of the Bible, you can call it a Bible with socialist characteristics, they rewrite the story to say that Jesus does not defend the woman, and Jesus himself stones the adulterous woman to death, because they view this as a story of someone challenging earthly authority, which is a threat to the regime itself. And it goes just to show you the lengths they will go in order to stamp out anything that they view as a threat to the regime. Christians are being persecuted. Obviously, there's an ongoing genocide of Uyghur Muslims. The Tibetan community faces, in some ways, an existential threat as they seek to stamp out their culture and their religion. So we're getting a variety of religious leaders together from many different faiths in order to discuss the CCP's ongoing war against religion today.
Well, as a Roman Catholic, and we share our denominational affiliation, is there anyone showing up from the Catholic Church? Because Pope Francis did the worst deal of his tenure with Chi-Coms.
I regret to say I reached out to no fewer than 3 cardinals and members of the Catholic Church, and none responded. I don't know if that's just they didn't get my message, or there's something bigger going on. I've been concerned about that deal that was made, and I hope to have more Catholic voices in the future speaking out about what the Chinese Communist Party is doing. So right now, that's kind of the biggest gap in our participation. We do have some great people coming, like Pastor Bob Roberts, who's the president for the Institute for Global Engagement and co-founder of the Multi-Faith Networks. We have other people like David Curry, who's the commissioner for the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, a variety of people represented, but I regret to say no high-level official from the Catholic Church right now. It's not too late to come if a local cardinal
Did Cardinal Gregory decline? He is the Cardinal of D.C. and the guy who ought to be there.
I reached out personally. I did not hear back. Again, I don't want to ascribe any malicious intent. It could just be that it got, it fell through the cracks in terms of the invitation. But we certainly would love to have him if he can make it.
Maybe you can get Archbishop Chaput out of retirement to come down. The trouble is, and I want to be very candid with the audience, Pope Francis has entered into a terrible deal for the Catholic Church in China that has effectively defenestrated the Catholic Church in China. They extended it. China has violated it. And everybody's embarrassed, but they're also afraid of Francis. So they won't speak up. And he doesn't really know what he's doing there. And it's a disaster for the Catholic Church. But let's focus on the people who are coming. Are there any house churches left? I know the Falun Gong, which is something of a cult, but it's been completely persecuted. And you get to be a cult in the United States, even unless you're hurting people, but not in China, right? They've completely shut those people down.
Absolutely. And I think the important thing for your listeners to understand is that when we talk about religious persecution in China, traditionally we talk about the Uyghurs, because that's, of course, the most sort of prominent and in some ways grotesque example of the lengths to which the CCP will go to stamp out a particular faith, and in that case, an ethnic minority as well. But it's happening across the board, from the Falun Gong to Christians. I mentioned the Tibetans before. And we're just hoping to get a wide range of voices to discuss this phenomenon that I think is underappreciated. So, for example, we're going to welcome Pastor Pan Yonggan to Washington, D.C., alongside a bunch of American religious leaders. This is Pastor Pan's first public-facing event in D.C. following his church members' escape from government persecution in China and asylum that he subsequently received in the United States. And again, I think the core point here is for people to understand the extent to which the CCP views various religious sects as a threat to their dictatorial rule. And all the more reason why the United States needs to be a strong voice for religious freedom and speak out on behalf of those that are constantly persecuted by the increasingly paranoid Chinese Communist Party.
Your friend of mine, Senator Cotton, was on with Bret Baier the other day saying that artificial intelligence is a race, an arms race that we cannot lose. All right, we have to win that. One of the things I can see the Chinese comms, the Chi-Com's doing is rewriting the scripture to insert the party in the place of Jesus and the party. And they'll use AI to do that. And they are absolutely in the race to rewrite history and to rewrite everything. Does everyone understand how absolutely Orwellian it is, what they're doing?
I think there's a tendency among the business community and the financial community to either ignore this or wish it away, or think that our investments in key technology in China are innocuous, when of course they're being used to perfect this surveillance state that I think would make Orwell blush. On the issue of AI, Hugh, I'm also excited to be doing a Twitter Spaces discussion with Representative Ro Khanna and Elon Musk later today, where we're going to discuss both the promise and as well as the risks of AI. Elon is one of the most prominent voices out there saying we need to pause, and we want to have a robust discussion of whether a pause would be practical, whether a pause would actually advantage the Chinese Communist Party. It's important that we win this competition, just given the implications of AI, not only for our military, but for humanity itself. But I'm absolutely concerned about the way in which the Chinese Communist Party would wield this technology to further their purpose of perfecting a surveillance state, which would not, in my opinion, stay confined to the borders of China, but would be a model that they would export around the world.
That pause thing gives me great pause. If we had paused on the Manhattan Project, we would not have gotten there in time, and hundreds of thousands, if not millions of Americans would have died in going ashore in Tokyo and in the islands of Japan. So I don't want to pause. I want visibility into what they're doing. What time is your Twitter Spaces with Elon Musk?
It is tonight at 7 Eastern.
Okay, I have 2 requests for that. Can you put in 2 requests for me?
Mm-hmm.
You got a pen handy?
I got it in my ear right here, Hugh.
All right, number 1, is there losing in sports? Would you ask Elon Musk that? Is that possible?
Yes.
Is there losing in sports? Because on the one hand, all of Wisconsin says no, but I want to know what Elon Musk. And then secondly, I've interviewed Peter Thiel on this program. I've interviewed Mark Zuckerberg on this program. Will he appear as a guest on the Hugh Hewitt show the most informative and absolutely stellar radio show in the United States and on the Salem News Channel. Would you relay that to me for him, please?
Yeah.
Both you and Roe have been on it, so you can both speak to how classy and comprehensive the program is.
I agree with that, but it begs the question, Hugh, if I am your de facto booking agent, what precisely does Dwayne do for this enterprise? Why do I have
nothing?
To
Dwayne's not even in the studio today. He's in Tennessee. I was just talking to Marsha Blackburn. Dwayne is on vacation. Not that that should surprise you, but he's on vacation, so nothing. So you're doing it all. But I'll do it at his convenience. We don't need Dwayne. In fact, it'll probably work better if we don't have Dwayne. Let me go back to the Chi-Coms and surveillance in the United States, because I have a new column at the Washington Post about what Putin will do if he wins in Ukraine. Let me ask you that first. What do you think Putin would do to the Ukrainian people if he occupied the entire country, executed Zelensky and the government? What do you think Putin would do?
I actually think it ties to what we were saying before. I think he would turn to his senior partner, his sugar daddy, Xi Jinping, and ask for his assistance in utterly suppressing the people of Ukraine. All of the best technology that would serve that purpose, whatever arms that they would need, anything they would need to do to stamp out any dissent from the Ukrainian people. It would be an absolute humanitarian tragedy. It would be a tragedy for freedom internationally. All the more reason why I think the bravery that the Ukrainians are displaying every day and the innovation they're displaying every day on the battlefield is something that's worthy of clinical and targeted support. And the second thing he would do is start to plan ways in which he could destabilize the NATO alliance. And I think that was really the primary risk of the war in Ukraine is what it would mean for NATO more broadly, in addition to just the tragedy on the ground of Ukraine itself. We know that Putin views NATO as an extreme, if not existential threat, and that he views the collapse of the Soviet Union as the greatest tragedy of the 20th century. So I think there's no question that A, he would seek all the help he could get in oppressing the Ukrainian people, and B, use a victory in Ukraine to destabilize the NATO alliance going forward.
Last question, Congressman Gallagher. Did the Republicans who are against aid to Ukraine, do they think in terms of what is foreseeable in the country? Not whether or not NATO goes to war, but just what Putin will do. And are they comfortable with that?
I wouldn't say they're comfortable with that, Hugh. I think it's really a question of ensuring that the aid we provide is well spent, that there's oversight of that aid. We've passed a variety of oversight laws. We have an inspector general examining that aid and making sure that we are understanding the fragility of our munitions industrial base so that we don't find ourselves depleting critical stockpiles that we need not only for ourselves, but we need in Taiwan. But I think we have an opportunity to ensure that we rebuild our munitions industrial base to provide support to the Ukrainians, as well as deter a war in Taiwan, make sure that Taiwan's future does not become Ukraine's present does not become Taiwan's future.
Congressman Mike Gallagher, though you come from a state indifferent to winning, and don't forget those two questions for Elon Musk tonight. Is there losing in sports? And will he come on the Hugh Hewitt show? Thank you, Congressman Gallagher. Have a good Twitter space to say hello to Ro Khanna for me. Go Guardians, first place Guardians, and you keep trying, Brewers. I'll be right back, America. It's the Hugh Hewitt show.
There's no failure in sports.
Welcome back, America. Olivia Beavers is our weekly update on what's going on inside of Congress. She is with Politico. Good morning, Olivia. How are you?
Hi, Hugh. Good morning.
Fill us in, if you will, on the National Defense Authorization Act. The NDAA is probably the most important bit of authorizing legislation that Congress does every year. It is in the middle of negotiations, I believe, in the House right now. What's going on?
Yeah, so this is a must-pass Pentagon policy bill. And essentially, we're finding that conservatives and GOP leadership are sort of clashing over the amendments that are coming forward. There's about 1,500 amendments, and conservatives want to be deciding what gets votes on where. And a huge important thing to watch is the Rules Committee, because you have Ralph Norman, you have Chip Roy, and you have Thomas Massey. And Roy is saying essentially if he doesn't feel like the process is fair in terms of what amendments get to have votes, then he might not support it even making it to the House floor. So Yesterday, the Rules Committee broke around 11 o'clock at night, and I had surprisingly finished a dinner, and I caught some of the members outside, but they had come up with this bifurcated plan. So they were going to pass a rule for basically the parts of the bill that everyone agrees on. And then they're going to get back together today and try to figure out a way forward on the amendments that are more debated and more controversial. And so some of those are things that I think you've talked about on your show. They're about abortion. They're about the inclusion program, and other things that conservatives want to basically expunge from this bill. And they're going to see if they can work forward and find an agreement, because they risk alienating some Democrats if those amendments are actually included.
Well, they can't do 1,500 amendments. Obviously, they can't. The abortion amendment, I hope, gets through. But that brings me to Senator Tuberville, who is making an ass out of himself because he's screwing up the lives of every general officer and every colonel and captain in the military services, and probably lieutenant colonels and commanders as well. Does he have any idea? Have you talked to him about the havoc he is wreaking on military families?
Well, so my colleague actually did a story on him today. It was actually about how President Biden has been actually treating a junior senator as a foil and going after him, saying he made a better football coach than he does a senator because of how he's been treating the Pentagon hold that he's had on not approving military leaders. And so basically he's saying, I'm going to keep blocking, confirming these military officials until you remove this provision that the Pentagon will pay for abortions, for travel to go get abortions. He doesn't look like he's backing down. It looks like something that he's quite proud of. He's touting it, saying he's fighting for abortion. He's making it something that is a name for himself. But other Republicans are saying we have to stop this. It's really hurting us. And for the first time, they don't have a Marine Corps commandant.
Oh, it is really hurting us, and in a way that I don't think he understands. I mean, what he's doing is solidifying a bid for being dumbest member of the Senate. I don't know who the dumbest member of the Senate is, but Tommy Tuberville is putting in his bid with this because it is absolutely devastating to the uniformed. It's got nothing to do with political appointees, got nothing to do with Lloyd Austin, got nothing to do with Joe Biden. It just screws military families who've spent their entire lives. And we're not talking about the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. Like, yeah, we are talking about the commandant of the Marine Corps, and that is terrible to hold that vacant. But does he actually know any military families? I mean, I just genuinely don't think he has any idea what he's doing here.
I mean, I'm sure he's hearing from them. I don't know from talking to him, but when you're a senator, when you're a member of Congress, you have your constituents and you have people calling you up all the time. So I have no doubt that he's having people that he knows reaching out to him. But he's, also sort of made a name for controversial remarks about white nationalism in the military as well. So Tuberville has been in the headlines quite a bit as well. And people are trying to make sense of what his end game is with those remarks.
Well, there is no end game here except burying yourself in irrelevance and getting a primary challenge in 2 or 4 years. I invited him on the program. They turned me down because they know it is actually indefensible if you're up against anybody who knows anything about the uniformed military. And I'm a civilian, but I have a glimpse into it, and I know what happens to the military when this happens. You can't move orders. You can't change positions. You can't fill billets. More importantly, wives and children are stuck in limbo. I just think it is the most extraordinarily stupid thing I have seen a Republican do in a long time, and that's saying a lot, Olivia Beavers. Do other Republicans tell you that off the record?
Oh, I think that there's a lot of frustration from other Republicans, and some of them are starting to say it, and not as direct terms as you are saying it, but they're, if they're senators and they're going on record saying, we need to change this, we want Tuberville to move, people are trying to appeal to him and he's not budging, then that's a clear sign that this is going to keep escalating until, you're having Republicans who might say go as far as you.
You can't fix stupid. And if he's going to be stupid on this, you can't fix it. But maybe the NDAA could fix it. I don't know how, by backdating all the promotions, and it just got to get fixed. Olivia Beavers, thank you for joining me this morning. Always a pleasure. Follow her on Twitter. Have you moved over to Threads, Olivia?
I I need to create an account, but I think I'm going to.
Don't do it. It sucks
No?
all the data out of your phone. I learned that too late. Don't
Okay.
do it. I'll be
And I
right
will-
back, America. Thank you, Olivia. Yeah, Threads is bad news, America. I hope you know that. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Stay tuned. Hour number 3 coming up. Good morning, Glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. Hugh Hewitt in Studio North. Pleased to welcome back Senator James Lankford of Oklahoma. Good morning, Senator. How are you?
Good morning, doing very well. You need to add howdy from Oklahoma to your bonjour from Canada.
You know that we do have to translate it into Oklahoma, folks, don't we? Senator, I want to start with a hard question, and I know senators don't like to rag on their colleagues, but what Senator Tuberville is doing to the uniformed military is disgraceful. Have you spoken with him about it?
I actually have not spoken to him about it. This is two bulls all hitting heads here. Senator Schumer could have brought up these nominees one at a time, and it takes 2 hours of floor time. They keep talking about it takes days and days. It takes 2 hours of floor time to be able to do it. And right now we have literally 7 days between now and the second week of September that we're going to be in session. Schumer is so focused on getting people out all over the country campaigning on his side that we're literally not in session doing our task. And if he wants to move some of these folks, he can move them. Senator Tuberville is not blocking them on the floor. He's just saying you can't do unanimous consent because President Biden has created this new abortion policy out of whole cloth in the military. And so this is a moment where Schumer is just trying to embarrass Senator Tuberville, and Senator Tuberville is strong and passionate about the value of children and sees this as important.
I am as pro-life as anyone, and I have been as pro-life as you are. But it is wrong to inflict this on the uniformed military. The Marine Corps doesn't have a commandant. No one's been promoted from captain to admiral. No one's been promoted from colonel to general. None of the generals have moved up. All the billets are screwed up. It's a fiasco for the military. Does the senator understand that the people paying the price here are military families with children, not the Biden administration?
Well, I don't think he was trying to be able to attack the Biden administration nor these individual families. He was just trying to say to the Biden administration, you created a new abortion policy in the military where literally you can get 5 days off and paid travel to go have an abortion. But if you have a funeral in your family, you can't get that time off and you can't certainly get paid travel. And so Senator Tuberville was trying to say, bring it to Congress. Let's actually have that debate. In the meantime, don't just create something there because you want to promote abortion. But again, Senator Schumer could bring any of these up. The commandant of the Marine Corps could be in place right now, but Senator Schumer is trying to make a point about all this to say, no, if it can't go unanimously, I'm not going to bring it to the floor at all. I won't take 2 hours of time in a day to be able to move nominees. By the way, we have 6 votes on nominees today. None of them are flag officers. Senator Schumer's not bringing any of those up.
Senator, we're going to have to disagree on this. This has never happened before. The unanimous consent is the rule in the Senate. This is a disastrous policy for the Republicans, and it will remain a disastrous policy for the Republicans. Indeed, it will cost us the ability to get back the Senate. And your colleague from Alabama ought to know that. I mean, I'm really over the top about this, and I think I'm not alone. And so take him aside and say, you are screwing up the party. Let's talk about NATO, Senator Lankford, because I know you sent the president a letter before he went off. He went to bed last night rather than attend the summit dinner. What do you think of his ability to lead the NATO alliance?
I think what does everyone in the country think of this at this point? Every time the president travels overseas, everyone takes a deep breath thinking, what's he going to say? What's he going to do? What's this going to look like on the world stage? So I understand everyone gets this. I mean, at this point, President Biden doing something awkward with a foreign official or avoiding schedule or saying something weird is a kind of a dog bites man story that is not a real news story anymore because it just has become so common. The biggest issue that we've got to have is what's going to happen with Ukraine. How is this alliance going to come together to be able to make sure that we're continuing to have stable relationships across the entire region and everyone's pulling their fair share? That was my letter to Biden in advance, is to make sure that he's reinforcing to everyone, okay, learn the lesson of what Russia's doing in aggression. Everyone needs to pony up for this alliance.
I have a new column in the Post this morning on what would happen if Putin won. I mean, what if he actually won? Toppled Zelensky, executed him, took over all of Ukraine to its 4 corners. What do you think would happen to the people of Ukraine if that happened, Senator?
Yeah, they would continue to be able to push back for decades on it. The Ukrainian people fought for their independence in 1991 from Russia. They gained their independence the first time. Now they're trying to push the Russians out again at this point. So I think that'd be an ongoing, long, protracted terrorist activity with the Ukrainians fighting against occupying Russians on it. At the end of the day, it is better for the world if Putin is not sitting inside of Ukraine, that he is isolated as a rogue leader in Russia. And he certainly, as we know from the beginning of the war, Putin wanted to be able to roll in not only to Ukraine, but announced that he wanted to be able to go into Poland as well, announcing that Poland used to be part of Russia as well before this war even started. So the world needs to see this and to know what Putin's real ambitions are.
Well, I also think that if he were to succeed, he would enslave the Ukrainian people, and I don't rule out Holocaust. I really don't. I think he is angry and bizarrely paranoid about what's going on there. And boy, the Russians are vengeful people when they occupy a country with which they have gone to war, as we learned in the aftermath of World War II. Americans have to put on their foresight cap. It is reasonably foreseeable that he would execute tens of thousands of people. Do you think that's true?
It is very possible. It is not beyond where Putin is at this point. Clearly, human life doesn't matter to him. He's pulling people out of jails and throwing them to the front lines to be able to fight Ukrainians at this point. Human life matters nothing to Putin, and that's very clear. And Russian moms need to continue to be able to make their voices heard in Russia to say our lives of our sons and husbands do matter.
Let me talk to you a little bit about whether or not the appropriation for full funding of Ukraine gets through. There is within our party an isolationist wing. Are they going to hold up funding for Ukraine?
I doubt it, because there's such strong support in so many ways to say we don't want to have American soldiers there, but we do want to definitely stand with the Ukrainians as they push back against the Russians. So that involves full funding. Listen, I'm one of those many people that says I don't want to spend money there, but I also don't want Russia to be able to win. And so to be able to block Russia from winning, we've got to be able to step in and do this. Lots of other countries have done this. It is very frustrating to me to hear the number of people in my own party say the Europeans are doing nothing when they're housing millions of Ukrainian refugees right now. They're doing all kinds of support financially. They're stepping up militarily to be able to share military equipment with the Ukrainians as well. The British have been way in on this battle to be able to help the Ukrainians. So there's a lot of nations that are helping Ukraine to be able to protect itself. We need to be in the middle of that as well, because it's important that the United States continues to be able to help people stand for freedom. That's who we are. We help other nations stand for freedom. We ignore the Ukrainians as they stand for freedom. Who are we anymore?
Well said, Senator. And I know you got to run. Please take to Senator Tuberville my continued invitation to appear on the show. If he's going to screw up the lives of every uniformed military member out there, he at least ought to come on a show like this and defend a stupid and terrible policy. Senator, thank you. I know you got to run. Thank you very much for joining me this morning. You folks out there may understand, I am really angry with Senator Tuberville. And it was a Democrat, I'd say the same thing. This is the dumbest thing I've seen a Republican senator ever do. And they've done a lot of dumb things. A lot of dumb Democrats, too. But this is the most stupid thing I've seen a Republican senator do. And if you got time on your hands today, call up Senator Tuberville. I don't like to beat up on Republicans. I really don't. But occasionally you just got to say, this is unacceptable. The Marine Corps does not have a commandant. There has not been a single general officer promotion. No colonel became a general. No, and that means billets. That means he's actually endangering our national defense because he's dumb as a brick on this. No one has sat him down and said, do you know what you're doing to people's lives, to children and military spouses and all the people who have to move here and there and everywhere that can't do it? Do you realize you're costing them money, that they can't pay for college, they can't pay for car? I mean, it's just remarkable to me that a senator would do this. And, you know, that was you saw Senator Lankford there doing the Republican cover, which is, oh, well, Senator Schumer could bring this up. Nope, not going to fly. This is not on Senator Schumer. This is on the Republicans. Not on Mitch McConnell. It's not on Jim Lankford. It's on Tommy Tuberville, because nobody else thinks this is a good idea. There are 49 Republicans. 48 of them think this is stupid. But one of them, I mean, we've had dummies in the Senate before and people who are never going to win the spelling bee. But someone cooked this up, and I'm sure he's pro-life. Glad to hear it. I hate the Department of Defense policy. It's illegal in my view. They have the NDAA. They can ban it in the appropriations process. They can refuse to do a bunch of different things. But they ought not to be punished. There are only like 600 general officers in the Army. I don't know how many there are in the Navy and the Air Force and the Marine Corps. But there are lots of colonels and captains as well. And then below them, If a captain doesn't move up in the Navy to become an admiral, a lieutenant commander doesn't become a captain, it's just a slinky. And I guess he doesn't understand. I guess he does not understand. And I don't know if anyone sat him down and said, you are a menace to the national security of the United States, Senator Tuberville. You are not being patriotic. You're being the opposite of patriotic with this mule-headed move. All right, enough said. I'll be right back, America. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to The Hugh Hewitt Show. Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. So pleased to welcome back an old friend of the show and of mine, Ambassador Ric Grenell, our former ambassador to Germany and our former acting director of national intelligence. Good morning, Mr. Ambassador. Welcome back. Thank you for getting up early.
Thanks for having me, Hugh.
I want to begin by asking you, did you ever go to any of these NATO summits when you were the ambassador of the DNI?
I did. During the Trump administration, obviously, we were all about trying to convince the members of NATO to actually pay their fair share. Obligations was a big deal. And as ambassador to Germany, the largest economy in Europe, they were not paying their fair share, and they still aren't, after telling us all sorts of excuses. And so, yeah, I did attend because that was a priority issue for so many ambassadors.
All right, so my first question is, President Biden skipped out on the big dinner last night, citing a big speech that he has to give today. In fact, you and I know he's 80 years old and he's tired. What do you think message that sends to NATO?
Look, I travel the world now, and I can tell you that everywhere I go, people say to me, government officials, world leaders, say to me that Joe Biden is old and he is not very good when they interact with him. He's distracted. He doesn't know who people are. They know he's not sharp. And I think the message that it sends is the United States is not sharp.
Ambassador Grenell, when you sit down with someone across the desk and they don't think you speak for your president, or they don't think your president knows what he's doing or is clueless, how does that impact your ability to negotiate?
Well, first of all, I would say if someone on the other side of the table doesn't believe that you speak for the president, doesn't think that you can walk into the Oval Office and actually get something done, then they're very dismissive of you. It's not a good negotiation tactic. And we could get into the Balkans, because that right there, to me, is the reason why there's so many problems in the Balkans. You can't have a State Department person in a crisis negotiating when everyone knows in that room that person doesn't even know the president. So I think that's a real problem. But the larger issue I think that you're getting at here is when our NATO allies look at somebody like Joe Biden and they're trying to ascertain whether or not he's up to speed on all of these issues. What the message is that's sent is that you can take advantage of us and you should ask for a lot, or you should dismiss us, or you should go to, God forbid, China to try to get some sort of leadership or help. And I think that's what we're seeing around the world, is that countries like Saudi Arabia are going to China. Countries in Eastern Europe are going to China. I mean, look at Germany. They still are selling cars at massive numbers into China and are completely afraid of standing up to China because the German economy is so dependent upon cars and selling cars in China. We need to have people who are pressuring the German government, pressuring NATO allies to do more, turn away from China, turn away from Huawei. Look at some of these issues right now. You have countries that are going backwards and cutting deals with Huawei and openly doing it because they know there's no consequences. And so all of the progress I think that we made with NATO countries is going backwards. I'll finish with this too. You know, Germany gets a lot of hits for not paying their fair share, but what about Canada? Canada is a member of NATO and absolutely not paying their fair share. And no one will ever be able to convince me that the Canadians can't pay.
You're right. I haven't even thought about that. I guess Poland is supposed to pick up the tab for everyone these days. Mr. Ambassador, the reason I asked you on is because there's a complicated dance going on. You know him, Secretary General Stoltenberg. I'm sure you know him pretty well. He is the NATO Secretary General. He's been very good at it. He's tired. He wants out. I think he's had 2, maybe 3 terms. And so the Brits offered up Ben Wallace, their wonderful Minister of Defense, whom you probably know as well. And Joe Biden said 9, vetoed him. So Joe Biden came up with Ursula von der Leyen, and I thought, oh, that's screwy. And you told me, no, she's good. So would you unpack the whole issue for us?
Well, first of all, I think you're right that Stoltenberg is really tired. And remember, he wanted to leave in the Trump administration. We really convinced him to stay because he's so good and because it's hard to find a leader of NATO that understands all of the different issues. I've been wildly disappointed in NATO leadership lately because paying a priority message. It's certainly no longer a priority message for our ambassadors and certainly not a priority message for Joe Biden. So that's too bad. But when it comes to Ursula von der Leyen, I know her quite well. She was the Minister of Defense in Germany when I was there for a short time. She and Chancellor Merkel do not agree and do not get along very well. That's why Merkel put her at defense, is because you put your German rival at defense because you know they're going to fail. They're not going to be able to get the 2%. They're not going to be able to build the military. They've got all sorts of problems, so you put them over there. But interesting enough is that Ursula is very close to Macron. And it was Macron's idea to move her into the EU job. And as soon as that happened, then you saw Chancellor Merkel pick Christine Lagarde, who Macron doesn't get along with, a French person, to run the banks in Europe. So there was this rivalry between Macron and Merkel that really played out in who they picked. And they picked the rival from opposite countries. I like Ursula. I think she's very serious. She has American kids. Some of her, I think she has 5 or 6 kids, and some of them are Americans. She was very good with Trump. She's very good with Biden. She is an incredible listener. She's articulate. I think she understands military issues, and there's no better diplomat. However, I think rewarding a German with the head of NATO is troubling to me. And Ursula aside, because I really do like her, I don't think it sends a really good message to pick somebody from a country that literally has ignored paying their obligations. Remember, the Wales Pledge in 2014 was a pledge that every member of NATO said, we're going to give ourselves 10 years. Think about that, Hugh. 10 years from 2014. That by 2024, you'll slide into 2% of your GDP being spent on military issues. And 20% of that portion will go for high technology issues. And it's just not happening in Germany. And that means the political will is not there. And that also means to me that we should not reward them with one of the most important jobs running NATO.
All right, so a personal affirmation of Van Leyen, and I don't know how to say her name, but a reservation. Von der Leyen. Von der Leyen. I just share your reservation about Germany because they continue to screw it. Meanwhile, given your ambassadorial chops on all things German, what is going on in the politics of that country? I read something in the Ellis News items yesterday that the far, far, far right in Germany is advancing. Is that correct?
Look, what it is correct, but I think it's a tiny bit overblown, but it is definitely growing. Look, the problem that you have is that the CDU, which is Merkel's party, she really strangled the party because she became so moderate. And so many conservatives in Germany looked for alternative choices, and so they've become part of the AfD. It's also the reason why the Green Party in Germany has risen. The Green Party controls the Ministry of Defense right now. And the Green Party, we've got to think in America, you've got to think differently about what the Green Party in Germany means. It's really Frankfurt soccer moms. It's wealthy women, and
I
they're
didn't know
supportive.
that.
It's not just environmentalists, is what we would think, but it's very suburban women largely, and they care about suburban type issues. And so the Frankfurt soccer moms have really taken over and really grown this Green Party, and now they're part of the coalition government. It's a story though that's not being told in America, because it's the damage that Merkel did to the party for her 16 years. She really ruined the conservative brand. I mean, you look at Brexit, the EU got smaller under Merkel, and I would largely blame her for not understanding the rules of immigration. Everybody wants to be generous, but if you don't have rules, you don't have borders. And that scared the British enough to leave the EU over Merkel's failure. You look at Nord Stream 2. How many times did Merkel look at me and say, you don't understand the German-Russian relationship? We can control the Russians, and this is about energy for us, and don't tell us what to do. Now, our position in the Trump administration was, let's put America first and say no and put sanctions on that Putin pipeline. Don't forget, Hugh, the Democrats, Senate Democrats, came in with Joe Biden and dropped those sanctions on the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. And if you look at some of the floor speeches from Democratic senators, they said, this is going to poke the Russians in the eye. This pipeline is inevitable. Let's not do it. Let's have consensus with our European friends. The opposite of America first is consensus with the Europeans. And we saw that with we saw that with the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. And I can argue that dropping the sanctions on Putin's pipeline led to the Ukraine war. It's the reason why we're there is because Putin said, well, if Joe Biden is going to drop these sanctions on my pipeline, he's obviously weak, and I should go finish the job in Ukraine. And I think that's troubling, and there's not enough people in the media pointing to when that weak moment happened to create this incredible war in Europe. Think about it. Europe is enthralled, engulfed in a war. And I believe that it's largely because we showed weakness and the Democrats dropped the sanctions on the Nord Stream 2 pipeline.
If you combine that with the exit from Afghanistan, I agree with you 100%. I'll be right back with Ric Grenell. Ambassador Grenell is now going to take us on a tour of the Balkans, which has become a powder keg underneath Joe Biden's non-tenure absentee presidency. Don't go anywhere, Ambassador Grenell. We'll be right back on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Welcome back, America. Ambassador Ric Grenell, former ambassador to Germany, former acting director of the National Intelligence Department, is joining me. And it's good to have you back, Mr. Ambassador, because one of your unsung accomplishments is bringing peace to the Balkans for a period of time. I mean, aesthetically, I'm glad you put Ronald Reagan on top of the embassy in Germany, but your substantive accomplishment was bringing Serbia and Kosovo into some kind of relationship. That's fallen apart. What is happening?
Look, the Biden administration's position, their policy, is to let the Europeans lead. This is once again trying to get consensus with the Europeans rather than push our own ideas. And look no further than the Balkans. You can add it to the list of failed accomplishments around the world. And it directly goes to the fact that the White House, Joe Biden's White House, is really not paying attention. And so when I was leading these negotiations, we had 4 economic agreements, which by the way, all 4 of those economic agreements are embraced by the Biden White House. They say it's a good idea and let's implement these, but nothing is being done to implement those because it falls into the European hands. When we were there, we were talking about cutting NATO troops. Remember that there are NATO troops in Kosovo, roughly about 650, I think. We were talking about bringing that down because we were making so much progress. And by the way, if you've got NATO troops in your country, it's really difficult to attract outside investment because there's a perceived conflict. Nobody wants to grow a business in a country where you need peacekeepers. And so I thought that part of the economic agreement would be let's get rid of some of these NATO troops, get it down to almost zero, and both sides were super supportive of that. But now, Hugh, we are adding NATO troops in Kosovo. The situation is so bad. We've had no EU or US official go into the northern part of Kosovo where there's a Serb majority when there was conflict. At the height of the conflict, no one would go in, and they all were telling me that, you know, it's too dangerous, you shouldn't go in. Well, I thought that was a bunch of bunk. So I went in a couple of weeks ago. I went in without security. I was greeted. People were in the streets waving to me. I met with 20 leaders. I sat down with them and explained to them why we needed to release the ethnic Albanian Kosovo police officers that had been taken. And then I had lunch, and, you know, of course there's hard feelings, and you got to do a lot of listening, and you got to do a lot of giving context. This is why it's not good to grab 3 police officers, because honestly, the world was absolutely criticizing and pressuring the disastrous leader of Kosovo, Albin Kurti. NATO has condemned him. Even the State Department under Anthony Blinken has condemned him as the guy who is starting this violence, who is really pushing unilaterally on these issues. And so, you know, the Europeans are not cutting it. They're just not interested in doing the tough diplomacy of being there and listening and then pushing on these issues. And so the situation is out of control. It's a tinderbox. It's not getting better. After we got the Albanian police officers released, there should have been international condemnation and a call for an elections immediately, and there wasn't. And I got to say, if I were a Serb living in North Mitrovica, I would say to the world, we did what you said we should do. We de-escalated the situation, and you didn't do your part. You didn't come in here and talk about elections, and so you are creating instability when you lie to us. When you tell us that if we do something, then you will see pressure for the other side to do something. And I think it's terrible. I think the House and Senate, U.S. House and Senate, the oversight committees are not doing their job. They're not holding the Biden administration to account. Where are these tough hearings? You know, I'm hearing that
Mr. Ambassador, you're too young to remember 1979 the way I do. But I got that feeling. I got that 1979 feeling again, where the Cubans are all over Africa and the Soviets are lining up to go into Afghanistan. Is that the feeling you have about? I mean, we don't have a White House. We got no president, in essence, just like 1979. Is that how you feel right now about the world?
I feel like there's not a single place in the world that is better off under Joe Biden. You tell me where. And I would be able to argue that the situation is worse. I mean, if I would have been sitting here with you a couple years ago to say that the Biden administration is going to remove the Houthis from the terrorist watch list, and that then from Yemen, they're going to launch missiles into the UAE at Abu Dhabi and Dubai, you would call me crazy. But that actually happened under the Biden administration. And our collective political response in Washington, D.C. was, don't look at this. We've got a media that are completely disinterested in the failures. I was watching the NATO coverage, and it was atrocious. Nobody was bringing up the fact that 8 out of 31 members pay their 2%. 8 out of 31. And now you want to talk about adding another country to the American people's budget to watch over. Listen, no new members of NATO when the current ones aren't paying their bills. Don't do that to the American taxpayer.
Well put. Ric Grenell, it is great to see you, Mr. Ambassador. Thank you for getting up early. I really do appreciate it. He's way out on the West Coast, but he is always a stalwart for freedom. Ric Grenell, listen to him. I'll be back tomorrow, America, on the next Hugh Hewitt Show.